The views and opinions expressed by the following program and its participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Bobo 89.1 FM and DMS Broadcasting respective stations. The program participants' opinions are based upon information they consider reliable and based on their knowledge.
Looking for something fun and different to do with the family? Join us at the Cayman Turtle Center for Grill and Chill Saturdays. Every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., enjoy a poolside barbecue, buckets of beer and daiquiri specials, and a live DJ. It's Grill and Chill Saturdays at Cayman Turtle Center.
Green sea turtle nesting season's approaching. Here's a few tips to keeping our friends safe. Turn off, redirect, or shield any lights that can be seen from the beach. Remove obstacles and litter from the beach. No bonfires on the beach, and remain quiet and distant if you see a nesting turtle. This message from the Cayman Turtle Center.
Welcome to Cayman Turtle Center.
A day of fun and adventure awaits at Cayman Turtle Center Island Wildlife Encounter. Swim and snorkel alongside sea turtles and other marine life. Meet tropical birds in the aviary, ride our turtle twister water slide, or simply relax by the lagoon. Plan your adventure today.
Visit us online at www.turtle.ky.
Good morning, listeners. Welcome to The Green Scene, hosted by the Cayman Turtle Conservation and Education Center. My name is Geddes Hislop. I'm the curator for terrestrial exhibits and education programs at the Turtle Center. I'm joined this morning by our education programs officer, Wendy Dandy. We're bringing the second season of our show, The Green Scene, and we hope that you'll tune in every Saturday at 11 a.m. right here on Bobo 89.1 FM as we talk about conservation, wildlife, the environment, culture, and lots more. So in each episode, we'll be exploring topics related to conservation here in the Cayman Islands, including protecting our natural environment, preserving our culture and heritage, and talking all about sea turtles, of course, and other native species. So last Saturday, we were talking about World Wildlife Day, and we had our special guest, Ms. Jane Hawkinson from the Department of Environment. That was an interesting conversation. But this week, we will be discussing Iron Men in Wooden Ships. Now, those of you that listened to the first season last year, Iron Men and Wooden Ships is our presentation, our award-winning presentation, actually, on the story of the Turtle Rangers, Cayman's turtling heritage and history. So we're not going to waste too much time. We're going to get into it pretty soon. So what we do is just get started. So, well, first of all, hi, Wendy.
Hi, good morning, Geddes, and good morning, listeners. Thanks for tuning in again this weekend.
Okay, so Wendy is a critical part of this because she is the lead research person in this program. And just to give you some background, this program is part of our education outreach. So the Cayman Turtle Center, Cayman Turtle Conservation and Education Center, key word being education, we have devised a series of outreach educational programs we call our ACT Talks, Animal Conservation Talks. They're kind of like TED Talks, where we go out to different corporations, companies, and we do presentations like Lunch and Learn, talking about the environment, our culture, and so on. It's all part of Cayman Turtle Center's outreach to educate the public about things that are important to the environment and important to our culture, all related to sea turtles, of course, at some point. And, it's just to let you know that we're more than just tourism and turtles. There's a lot more going on there. We like to think of ourselves as not preserving and conserving Cayman's not only environmental heritage, but also our cultural heritage. So what we did was we were looking at the story of turtling. And it was difficult at the time when we started to find a complete story. There are bits and pieces here and there in all the documents and information we looked at. So we decided to put it together and make it into a presentation and interviewed a lot of people, a lot of old turtlers from West Bay, East End, talked to people to members of the Cayman Islands Seafarers Association, spent months digging through the archive. And a big shout out to those guys at the archive, especially Trisha there.
Yeah, it's a big shout out to Trisha.
He's a gem. And we ended up with a presentation that we call Iron Men and Wooden Ships. And the name itself is a tribute to these men that went out there and literally risked their lives to feed their families going through this turtling episode. And because of their efforts, they laid the foundations for Cayman's economy, basically. And that was the hypothesis when we first started off, and we found it to be true. So what we're going to do right now is, for those of you that never heard this, you can look back at our Cayman Turtle Center's YouTube channel, and in one of the Green Scene episodes recorded there, we have the original Ironman and Wooden Ships episode that we recorded last year. I can't remember which episode it is actually, but it's one of them. So you can go back and listen to that. But for those of you that have not heard it before, we can give you maybe Wendy, we can give them a quick recap.
Yeah, for sure.
Of what happened.
All right, so Iron Men and Wooden Ships, as Geddes was just saying, is basically a homage to the older men in Cayman that really put Cayman on the map and formed our first economy. So to get into it, it was quite months of research in the National Archives, and it's basically a story taking you on the history of Cayman in terms of turtling. And so far to date, I think it's about the most best chronologically ordered presentation out there so far that we've come across.
Yeah,
in regards to basing history upon the timeline of turtling. And we're talking about since the discovery in 1503 by Ferdinand Columbus, by the way, not Christopher Columbus, his son, and all the way up to the 1940s. So we found a lot of interesting facts out while we were doing our research. One of our favorite facts and most interesting ones is the fact of the turtles being long gone before our first settlers in the islands. So it was thought that, known Grand Cayman, or the Cayman Islands in general, had the largest green sea turtle population in the entire Caribbean, with a minimum of 2 million green sea turtles, which seems unfathomable now. And the early Europeans that came down, that was their source of fresh meat, because in those days they pickled meat. And the French, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the English, all picked up on it, the Dutch as well. And they would all stop there. Geddes has a great quip that I always use, the gas station of the Caribbean, and they all stopped there to load up their ships. So there's a lot of text stating that the Cayman Islands was directly responsible for the Europeans being able to penetrate so deeply into the Caribbean all the way down to Trinidad. And they actually wiped out this turtle population in just under 100 years. And they discovered it in 1503. The first settlers came in 1720s to 30s, and the green sea turtle population was long gone before then. So a popular misconception, that was a long-winded way of saying we thought the first Caymanian turtlers were the reason for that, but we were very mistaken and shocked and relieved as well to find out otherwise. So we were never turtling around these areas. So that's just the beginning of the basis of Iron Men and Wooden Ships, and it evolves from there, as Geddes knows.
Yeah, because that was like you said, that was a big relief. Actually, because the Europeans wiped out that turtle population, it's one of the reasons why Caymanians were forced to go to the sea, to turn to the sea when they settled the islands. And something else we found out is that when they started turtling, most people know that they went to Central America. Some remember they went to Cuba. But we found out that Puerto Rico was also one of their turtling sites. Mm-hmm. That was something that was very unusual. They went north, they went west, but we didn't know that they went east, all the way to Puerto Rico. Oh, mm-hmm. And these guys, they also went through some real hardships. That's why we gave them the name Iron Men. It was not only because they're sailing with no instruments. Every time we go through this thing, my admiration
it's unremarkable what these guys go through, and what we're driving home along with the Iron Men. I'd love to share quite a few stories as the show goes on, but what we're also really bringing home is the fact that Cayman seamen were considered some of the best seamen in the world by very well notarized maritime companies. And Caymanians evolved such a strong sense of seamanship in such a short period of time. There's a lot of famous seafaring cultures, the Polynesians, the Vikings, Norwegians, a lot of them. But these guys have had centuries, even thousands of years to perfect their craft. Whereas Caymanians did it in under 200 years in an unprecedented level like never seen before. Even the craftsmanship in building ships and how they went about fishing for turtles. No other culture in the world has done what we have done, or could have done what we've done, how we did it as well. And it's just simply fascinating and seems to be, forgotten in time to some extent. So we really are proud to present this and remind people where we've come from and what literally put us on the map and kept us alive and sustained to eventually become a banking capital of the world.
Yeah, and these guys, it's all hail to these men and everything they did. But not only men, I should say women too, because while the men were away, the women held down the fort at home. And I think we talk a little bit about that later on in the show. Another thing that you mentioned is that you mentioned how these maritime companies came all over to admire Cayman seamen. I remember in the archive, one of the papers we came across talked about in Jamaica. This is I think it was in the 1600s or early 17. Well, no, sorry, it'll have to be the 1700s or 1800s. That's what it was. Sometime in the 1800s, the commissioner in Jamaica talked about inviting they had a sort of a trade show going on in Kingston, and Cayman partook in that. They brought over turtle shells and stuff and showed off their crafts. But what people came for was to admire the Cayman ships. And one of I think it was from Barbados, one of the commissioners, British commissioners I think it was from Barbados or somewhere down there, wrote in this document that how they were looking forward to come into Jamaica to see the Caymanian sailing vessels, admire them in their regattas. So from way back then, people recognized the craftsmanship and the skill of these guys that could barely read and write.
Yeah, just primary school education. Also to shout out to the type of endemic woods that we had made it excellent as well. The ironwood and the mahogany. Our endemic mahogany is like no other. This wood is salt resistant, worm resistant, whereas these Europeans are used to boats where when their ships ran up on shore, their hulls and everything would be broken up right away, whereas our hardwoods, you just push that off iron shore and ready to go again,
Yeah. So they had the advantage of these super materials.
Yeah, and the craftsmanship of carving it in such a way that you make such a dense wood buoyant in the best way possible to be. It was one of the fastest ships at the time, one of the fastest type of sailing ships in the world at a time, at a certain time as well.
Yeah. Yes, and I remember
more physics involved than these men realized that they were using. You know what I mean? With just primary school education, and this is physics to come down to the perfect angles and
and working with those
all
materials.
the stuff I'm not that aware about with shipbuilding, but going through the archives with how amazed everyone was by it. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, what was interesting, the information is there. You just had to dig for it, but I'm really impressed that the information was there. Of course, we had Trisha to help us find it. All hail to the archives and the way they can find stuff. But it's interesting that the information was there. If you're patient enough and you dig, you can find it. So the Iron Man and wooden ships is a tribute to Cayman's seafaring heritage, as many mentioned, from the angle of turtling. Because of turtling, and remember this is one of the famous quotes, because of turtling, the turtling industry, this is where the Caymanian gained their seafaring skills, because they had a reason, and the primary reason was turtling, because that was the main source of income. In fact, it was, I think what the quote said, it was like 80-something% of the island's income at that time, and employing about 80% of the population at that time. Certainly all the able-bodied men. They were all out to sea. The only ones that stayed behind were the women and and some of the elderly, very elderly, and the very young. But some women, as we find out, every time we do this presentation, I notice, and I guess you could back me up with that, Wendy. What I notice is two things happen. One, you can see people, especially the older Caymanians, they're just glowing with a sense of pride. Because they're finding out, and then the younger ones, the usual thing we get is, why didn't we learn this in school?
Yeah. That's how I felt when I was doing the research and stuff. I'm here teaching to the public, but I'm just learning this stuff since I've done this presentation. And as you said, the archive is so well stocked and everything is there. But I don't know. Yes. Yeah. The heartbreak was there. I don't know why we didn't learn this in school.
Yeah, because this is the heritage of who you. This is learning who you are and where they came from, and especially when you presented to the Coast Guard, all those young guys there, young seamen and Coast Guard officers. You could see them just saying, this is where I came
my
from.
grandfather.
Yeah, this is where I came from. This is I remember my grandfather talking about this kind of thing, and that was so. We felt we did the right thing.
Yeah, it's fulfilling.
We didn't expect the reaction that we got. We hoped that we figured people would appreciate it, but we didn't expect it to that extent. And any of you listening out there, listen to the show. If you have any contributions you can give us. This is a work in progress. The way we look at it, because almost every time we present, somebody gives us something new, some new gem. There's a lot of things that are not written down. And this stuff needs to be recorded somewhere, and we've taken it upon ourselves to do this because that's kind of what it evolved into. Okay. All right, so that's a quick introduction. I think we're going to take a quick break now, and when we come back, we probably talk a little bit more about give you some of the stories from the Ironmans and Woodship, we're going to get into this part 2 because we're actually working on a follow-up to this. Okay. So, without any further ado, we'll take a break right now. Thank you for listening. You're right here on The Green Scene, hosted by the Cayman Turtle Conservation Education Center on Bobo 89.1 FM. We're going to take a few commercial breaks and we'll be right back.
Looking for something fun and different to do with the family? Join us at the Cayman Turtle Center for Grill and Chill Saturdays. Every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., enjoy a poolside barbecue, buckets of beer and daiquiri specials, and a live DJ. It's Grill and Chill Saturdays at Cayman Turtle Center.
Green sea turtle nesting season's approaching. Here's a few tips to keeping our friends safe. Turn off, redirect, or shield any lights that can be seen from the beach. Remove obstacles and litter from the beach. No bonfires on the beach, and remain quiet and distant if you see a nesting turtle. This message from the Cayman Turtle Center.
Welcome to Cayman Turtle Center.
A day of fun and adventure awaits at Cayman Turtle Center Island Wildlife Encounter. Swim and snorkel alongside sea turtles and other marine life. Meet tropical birds in the aviary, ride our turtle twister water slide, or simply relax by the lagoon. Plan your adventure today.
Visit us online at www.turtle.ky.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to The Green Scene, hosted by the Cayman Turtle Conservation Education Center. My name is Geddes Hislop, and I am joined by my colleague Wendy Dandy. We are talking about Iron Men and Wooden Ships, Part 2. Right? For those of you just tuning in, Iron Men and Wooden Ships is our presentation, award-winning presentation on the history of turtling and seamanship here in the Cayman Islands. And we were just, on the first section, we were talking a little bit about the first part, where basically admiring these men and all that they went through to go through the turtling industry, to provide for their families, and to kickstart Cayman's economy into what it is today, I should say. And continuing on, we were talking to some of the people that we interviewed. I remember Mr. Mark Anglin from West Bay, Mr. Geraldo Rankin from East End. Yeah, they had some stories though. Some of these things that these guys went through.
Quite a lot. Just even small things like going to get water, for example. Once they're out in the Mosquito Keys, I don't know if you mentioned this, the last place they settled on for turtling was the Mosquito Keys, which were some mangrove and sand keys about 40 to 100 miles off of the shore of Nicaragua.
Yeah.
And to get water, there was about 2 watering holes, and I believe the closest one was about a 17-mile little zip of a sail over to a spot called Diamond Key, with a freshwater well, and well water alone, it's not the one, right? And they're telling us stories of, they're pulling up the water and the water is full of dead snakes and frogs. And I'm like, oh, no, sir. Like, how do you deal with that? And then, when very thick Cayman accent, we're in a business boat. That just brush that off and go on about our way, same way, So, like, that is just a Tuesday, 11 a.m.
Yeah.
Regular, or, the basics of dead frog and snake water. Much less everything else. These guys brought all of their materials with them to make huts, because they had to do their makeshift huts, because they were left out there on these keys brought by schooners, left out there with their cat boats for up to 3 months, and they would just sail from keys to different keys, and like camping without the camping gear. The camping gear was silver thatch leaves, you know what I mean, and silver thatch rope, and it's just unbelievable. Like, the tide could go out unexpectedly, and you're on a sand key, and you're just there blazing in the sun until this tide decides to come back in 5 hours later, because sometimes you can't predict the weather like that, or unpredicted storm. There's no WhatsApp weather updates or anything coming in at all.
Yeah, and sometimes these ships, I think, and some of the stories, some of these guys, it's basically what it did was it dropped off people at these different sand keys, teams to collect their turtles. And so they would spend their time on that sand key, like Wendy said, for about 3 months, just catching turtles, putting them in a pen that they built called a corral. And ship would go from key to key, picking up turtles, filling up with holes, and then drop those turtles back to Cayman, come back, collect some more. And sometimes they come back to a key and nobody be there. Because storm came by and just wiped them out.
Yeah, or no turtles too, wiped out the pen of turtles.
Yeah, or sometimes the other way around. Those guys sitting on the key waiting for the ship to come, and the ship doesn't come back because the ship got lost in a storm.
Yep.
And remember we presented these things to a lot of different companies, but as I mentioned earlier, what we really like is when we present to these Caymanian groups, like to the Coast Guards and our friends there with the Cultural Foundation and the Seamen's Association. That was the acid test. That was actually kind of scary. Those guys all hardened seamen, and they don't have any filter. they'll tell you straight up. They'll tell you straight up if you're messing up or not.
That don't go so.
Not in a good way. But they approved of it, and it was really heartwarming to hear these guys.
It was very well received, really, excellently.
Yeah, and it was great to hear these guys saying, we're so glad that somebody's out there telling our story. But these guys they themselves went through some hardships because they've endorsed some of these things. They have their own stories to tell. Some of these guys have even been in the war. Yeah, and I think the war had a significant impact on the turtling industry as well, didn't it, Wendy?
Yeah, so the war, a big impact was shifting the dynamic of our seamen and the source of our economy. And, before I get into that part, that is what Iron Men and Wooden Ships 2 is about. It's unreleased at the moment, but it's coming to a presentation room near you soon. So what that presentation is about is a carryover from Iron Men and Wooden Ships 1, and it's what they've done after turtling, because the maritime culture was still a huge deal in carrying Cayman's economy and being the only economy. And that from that economy was a transitioning over into banking. So World War II was a big factor of ending turtling on a whole. And World War II started the 3rd of September 1939, I believe. But before that, we get into that. Caymanians have been traveling for work for quite some time, and our reputation has preceded us for quite some time as well for being excellent and respectful workers. From the building of the Panama Canal a flood of Caymanians moved over there, and that was after the Spanish-American War ended in 1898. The Panama Canal was built between 1904 and 1914. And Caymanians did a variety of jobs there. And one of the coolest facts that I've learned as well is the highest paid worker at the Panama Canal was indeed a Caymanian, and he was a welding diver.
Oh.
So we've been both saying this, in this maritime game of all sorts of the field for a very long time. So skip forward to World War II. Caymanians, rallied to a British cause out of loyalty and all took part in the war, both inside and outside of the armed forces. Some enlisted in the Army, especially the Jamaica Defense Force, the Royal Navy, the Royal Air Force, even a lot of them being in Trinidad as well. We had a lot of Air Force pilots that were Caymanians. So a lot of people don't know this, but a majority enrolled in the British Merchant Service as civilian seamen as well. So these guys have seen a lot. These are seasoned vets, like veterans, really. I have a few examples here. Keith Tibbetts, Mr. Keith Tibbetts of Cayman Brac. He was serving on a Jamaica banana boat, and he was actually present for the evacuation of Dunkirk and was later torpedoed off Puerto Rico. Dunkirk, that the movie was just made for 2 years ago and won those Oscars, right? This Cayman Bracker. Elgin Scott, another Bracker. The Brackers out here are worldwide renowned too, because also in the first presentation, for those of you from Cayman Brac, we really bring home to what a major role Cayman Brac played in the turtling industry and all of the innovations they put towards it, even after being settled over 100 years later than Grand Cayman.
Yeah.
So Elgin Scott from Cayman Brac, he was a prisoner of war as well at the age of 19 when his ship was captured. And for 5 years, he went to prison in Stalag 17 in Poland with 5 other fellow Caymanians. So these guys, listen, iron men in wooden ships, iron men in naval ships.
Wow.
And all of this is just, almost forgotten. And if not forgotten, not known about. You know what I mean? And it's not to shame anyone. I didn't know this until I learned all of this from COVID upwards. And I was in such disdain of how do I not know all of this these strong men that have made this island what it is. So, at least 1,000 Caymanian men went off to war, and 2/3 of the adult male population, basically, and about 25 to 40 of them perished. Right? So, the first years, the 2 years of war were the worst financially. So these guys had to go out in order to make some kind of living to bring back home. And, after the war, or when they were in the war, their reputation again preceded them because they were always remembered as mostly to not being troublemakers, because, they talk about the youth now, but those seamen back in the days were a rowdy bunch. So, captains and stuff always based their preferences on men that were, had a good temperament and good morals. And this is repeated text too on Caymanians, with having such an excellent temperament, good morals, know how to follow rules and stuff like that. That makes you want to work with them, because when you're out to sea with someone, like, you need to know who your crew is.
Yeah.
And they were just renowned for that alone. And that's besides their skill as well. So to have all of that skill plus these personality traits that are so favorable, like, I know I'm speaking strongly about it, but it's just written over and over again in text, that even in official documents, that it had to be mentioned about our temperaments and our morals as well as our skills. And that part doesn't have to be mentioned at all, but that's for how much we were favorable. So World War II definitely helped even more spread that word that was already known. Mm-hmm. So that also goes into the advent of evolving us more now into the maritime of cargo shipment that we get into in the coming years.
Oh, that's a, yeah,
A mouthful, sorry.
That's a mouthful.
I
but
get
yeah.
a little carried away sometimes.
But yeah, that's the thing. Once we started getting into this, and we found this certain things repeated, even from Ironman, like you mentioned, Ironman wooden ships. They talk about the temperament of the Caymanian seamen, where even the Nicaraguans, when you mentioned earlier that the Caymanians had to go to different locations to find turtles. They went to all the Spanish ports. They went to Cuba, Puerto Rico, Costa Rica, ended up in Nicaragua, and got kicked out of all of them. But when they finally arranged that treaty with Nicaragua, the Nicaraguan authorities never had a problem with Caymanians. They take them at their word. They trusted them to pay their dues and everything.
They wouldn't even count their turtles when they were leaving. They just trust them like, we got 200, all right, we'll collect 50 cents.
Yeah,
per
so
turtle tax.
Caymanians had that.
Great relations.
Those guys had that
with everyone.
Yeah, they had that good reputation all the way through, and that carried even into the war years. So from the talking about from the 1800s all the way up to the 1940s, that speaks a lot for us, for an island, a small population like this. And again, the more and more we do this, the more we realize what an impact this tiny place has on the world. Affecting people all the way back into Europe, Central America, South America, North America, and of course you mentioned that Trinidad connection. Yeah, being originally from Trinidad, I've heard about Caymanians in Trinidad, but I didn't know what a connection was.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, during the war years, they were pilots. Yeah, that's amazing. So there's so much more going on. So we're anxious. We can't wait to hear for this presentation to come out there, and we can bring it to you. We got to take a break now, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about what we're finding out for Iron and Wooden Ships too. So you're listening to The Green Scene on Bobo 89.1 FM. We'll be right back.
Looking for something fun and different to do with the family? Join us at the Cayman Turtle Center for Grill and Chill Saturdays. Every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., enjoy a poolside barbecue, buckets of beer and daiquiri specials, and a live DJ. It's Grill and Chill Saturdays at Cayman Turtle Center.
Green sea turtle nesting season's approaching. Here's a few tips to keeping our friends safe. Turn off, redirect, or shield any lights that can be seen from the beach. Remove obstacles and litter from the beach. No bonfires on the beach, and remain quiet and distant if you see a nesting turtle. This message from the Cayman Turtle Center.
Shelby the Turtle here at the Cayman Turtle Center. Did you know that turtles breathe air just like people, but we can hold our breath a lot longer than our human friends, between 4 and 7 hours underwater? Come and visit me. I'm the largest turtle at the center, weighing in at 585 pounds.
Visit the Cayman Turtle Center and explore Shelby and her friends.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to The Green Scene, hosted by the Cayman Turtle Conservation Education Center. My name is Geddes Hislop. I'm joined by my colleague Wendy Dandy. We are talking about Iron Men and Wooden Ships, the story of Cayman turtlers, Cayman seamen, in fact. So, if you're just tuning in, the earlier episodes we gave a little recap about Iron Men and Wooden Ships 1, which is our award-winning presentation, and that's talked about the history of turtling here in the Cayman Islands and contribution these gentlemen made to the kickstarting our economy as we know it today. We're working on a part 2. The turtling industry came to a close in the early 1960s, and we were wondering, well, what these guys do from there, and we're finding out quite a lot. Wendy mentioned some things about the Second World War during the 1940s, and some of these guys here were recruited gained such a reputation for their seamanship skills from around the world. In fact, we have quite a few sea captains here that had significant achievements. I remember we talked to Captain Paul Hurlston, among others.
Yeah, very impressive, Captain Paul Hurlston.
Yeah, that guy is a gem.
Yeah, definitely a national hero.
Oh. And these guys in the Seamen's Association, they have so many stories to tell. They represented this country so well around the world that people came here to Cayman from North America, from Europe, and to find some of the best seamen in the world right here in this small island. And they learned their skills, or their skills were honed through the turtling industry. That's what we're finding out. And then we get into things like the name Southwell comes up in that, doesn't it?
Yeah. So there's what they call the Southwell years, right? So this is another evolution into our maritime history. And I would probably say our biggest moneymaker in the maritime history part of us. And that's after World War II ended, as I said. Job vacancies were quickly filled, and many servicemen had no difficulty in finding maritime employment abroad, Caymanian servicemen. So, building on the reputation they had during the war, Caymanians also benefited from the post-war boom in shipping, particularly in the use of oil tankers and other bulk carriers. And, more jobs than ever were available on American vessels. And, as I just mentioned, particularly in the use of oil tankers and other bulk carriers, Daniel K. Ludwig is a big player in knowingly, or as being the man in all caps, who knowingly or unknowingly charted the course that Cayman would take. And, for all of you who don't know, Daniel K. Ludwig was a very, very rich, a billionaire shipping owner. And he had a very prestigious company, many companies. He was even a Nobel Prize winner of the transport industry. And he also won the Elmer Sperry Award for his planning and development of the design of the modern supertanker. He made the first supertanker, and his vessels broke numerous numbers in 1940, in 1945, 53, 55, 56, and 59. Each year he proceeded with having a higher being the highest tonnage in the world of supertankers. And he also owned a shipyard in Japan where he built many of his ships. So this guy is the innovator of large bulk carrying.
I never heard that name before until we started doing this research. I've heard of Southwell, but never heard of this Ludwig before.
Right.
So yeah, again, we're diving into history that's just there, but nobody knows about it.
So Ludwig, quite the shipbuilder, hence a Nobel Prize, not to be taken lightly. And his tankers weren't only record holders, they were also proved to be the best ships ever built, quite literally. All of his surface were exposed to corrosion were protected with effective anti-corrosive coatings, with quality inspections and systematic maintenance. So I'm saying all of this for a reason. As usual, I have a long-winded way of getting back around to why Caymanians are important. But vessels in continuous use, for over 20 years, never having to idle for unplanned repairs. And the reason for the difference of Ludwig's maintenance context, the reason for the difference is Ludwig's maintenance. Okay, stop. So his vessels would be in continuous use for over 20 years without even having to idle or go for unplanned repairs, and would last a lot longer than any competitors. And, the reason for this difference was Ludwig's maintenance concept for his tankers. So very loyal crews were built up in a systematic way based on the ship's officers being responsible for maintenance. So as we mentioned before, Caymanians were well known for being loyal and hardworking crew members. So Ludwig, a lot of Caymanians were employed on his ships and were reasons to help maintain some of the best ships in the world. And Ludwig actually had his personnel manager, Captain Merrill G. Southwell, come to Cayman to recruit Caymanians. And that's where we have the Southwell years from.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's the connection. Oh, this is going to be an interesting presentation. Really interesting. So, guys, this work we're doing is to make sure we're preserving our culture and our heritage. This is what made Cayman what it is. And this is, it's important to know because people don't realize the connection and such significance that Cayman had in the world even before the finance and tourism industry came into being. And it's all due to these men and their commitment and their skill. So the Iron Man, again, the word Iron Man just praise homage to these men and what they did for us, and all the work that they did to make Cayman, to put Cayman on the map in more ways than one. What else can you tell us about Southwell?
Well, Southwell, as I said, he was the personnel manager for Ludwig, who came, and when he came, sorry, I'm a bit away from the mic. When he came and first met, our Caymanian men and boys, his main agent was a lady and an integral part of all of these men who went out to sea on these tankers and shipping boats. Miss Gwendolyn Bush. They were all called Miss Gwen's boys. For all of my older listeners, I'm sure you know exactly who I'm talking about. And Miss Gwen was the lady, she was the in-between man, the in-between lady. And she worked for the head office in New York. And she had never left Cayman before. And she made sure all of these boys were taken care of. She took care of all of their passports, filled out all of their forms. Some of these guys couldn't read and write. Miss Gwen was told she couldn't be filling in these forms and she still filled out their forms, got them there, and she always went to see her boys off and took them to the airport. Every last one that left and every last one that arrived back, she was always there. And at the time, the airline was LAXA, which was a Costa Rican airline. I don't know if anyone will remember that. I don't even know about that. And she was just a great individual, and she really pushed for these men to get away and to be exposed to the world and get opportunities and get education. And she herself never ever left the island.
Oh. So now we're getting away from maritime. We can get into aviation when we're talking about these men. Wow.
That's sending them off to their ship ports.
Oh, it's the ship ports. Okay.
Yeah, so once they would contract them to the Ludwig shipping company, then she would sort out their contracts for them on what ships they're going to be on, what destinations they're going to be at. So she'd get all their permits and everything ready. And then they would either have to fly out to different locations, whether in the States or different Caribbean islands or down to South America, to join the actual ship to go about their voyage. But the voyage would never leave from Cayman, because as we don't even have a dock now. And these guys are going out on super tankers, so they'd go up to New Jersey, New York, Alabama, all around.
All right. So, wow. Seamanship took these Caymaners out into the world, showed them what they could do. And again, I remember one of the interviews with, this is just going back a little bit, but Captain Paul, when he talked about the income from these guys, they brought this money back home. Most of these men, they'll send this money back home to their families. And I remember him mentioning, we believed when we first started this, Wendy, that this is what helped kickstart our economy, because all this foreign income coming in. It is. Not believe it. It is. Yeah, these
actually what kickstarted our economy.
Yeah, like you said, a significant portion of the men, or literally a significant portion of the population of the island, left to go to work on these bulk carriers.
Yeah, 2/3.
And sending their money back. 2/3. I mean, that's what encouraged banks to start moving in here.
Mm-hmm.
I remember
first Barclays, sorry to cut you, the first Barclays Bank came here because of the money that the seamen were bringing in. Yeah. And I think anything over $200 you had to go to Jamaica to deposit that. That's too much money.
Yeah.
But the first bank came here, Barclays Bank, because of the money the sailors were bringing in.
That's the genesis of the banking industry. Wow. So that's a significant contribution these men are making. So it's only fair to pay tribute to them by telling the story and trying to tell it as best we can. And as I mentioned before, when we tell these stories and do these presentations, we go to anybody, anywhere right now. So far, we have the authorization not to charge anyone for it, just to get the word out. And the feedback from talking to people helps us to improve the presentation, make it get our facts even more accurate, our timelines, get more stories. This is the whole thing behind it. So, keep making this presentation more and more relevant, more and more accurate. So again, if anybody you listening out there, you have anything you think you can contribute to this to help us make it a little better, yeah, feel free to contact us. So,
yeah, definitely. We love to collect more information. Just that Red Sky at Night
yes.
last weekend, I got some great contacts from the presentation. Get Us Delivered this time. You gave me a little break. Thank you.
yes. So just to take aside, we participated in the recent Red Sky at Night event, which was last week Saturday, and that worked out a lot better than we thought because we were going to be outside. We figured, there's lots of people walking by. Nobody going to stop in this booth. Not really selling anything, but the people that did stop, they were fascinated. We got great feedback, and like Wendy said, we got some good contacts to be able to get some more information and make our presentation even more relevant and accurate. So that's the whole idea behind this. Get that information out there, get the feedback, get Caymanians knowing who they are and where they came from, and make those contributions. So wow, we've gone through quite a lot there.
Yeah.
Yes. So Ironmen and wooden ships.
There's a lot of information we haven't shared, so draw you guys in to get us to come in and talk.
Yeah.
So much other cool facts.
Yes, this is just a preview. Letting you know what's coming out. I know some people like our friends at the Department of Tourism have been asking about it. I'm sure our friends over at the Cultural Foundation would also be definitely interested in it. So, yeah, soon come, guys, soon come. So again, we're gonna take a quick break and come back for our last segment of the show. We're talking about Ironmen and wooden ships, the story of our turtling industry, and the story of the men that started off in the turtling industry and ended up into the bulk carriers around the world, moving around the world. Some of these guys they talk to have been into the Gulf of Arabia, of all places, all the way from tiny Cayman. So we're going to take our last commercial break. We'll be back in a few. You're listening to The Green Scene on Bobo 89.1 FM.
Looking for something fun and different to do with the family? Join us at the Cayman Turtle Center for Grill and Chill Saturdays. Every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., enjoy a poolside barbecue, buckets of beer and daiquiri specials, and a live DJ. It's Grill and Chill Saturdays at Cayman Turtle Center.
Green sea turtle nesting season's approaching. Here's a few tips to keeping our friends safe. Turn off, redirect, or shield any lights that can be seen from the beach. Remove obstacles and litter from the beach. No bonfires on the beach, and remain quiet and distant if you see a nesting turtle. This message from the Cayman Turtle Center.
Shelby the Turtle here at the Cayman Turtle Center. Did you know that turtles breathe air just like people, but we can hold our breath a lot longer than our human friends, between 4 and 7 hours underwater? Come and visit me. I'm the largest turtle at the center, weighing in at 585 pounds.
Visit the Cayman Turtle Center and explore Shelby and her friends.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to The Green Scene. This is our last segment of the show. We were talking about Ironmen and wooden ships. If you're just joining us, you missed a whole lot in the first segment. But basically, we're Ironmen and wooden ships, for those of you guys that just happen to be joining us, is our award-winning presentation on the history of turtling, turtle ranges here in the Cayman Islands. We did a part 1, talking about turtling industry right up until the 1960s when it came to a close. And then we were giving you a little teaser preview of part 2 and the contribution that these gentlemen made to kickstarting our economy, presenting Cayman to the rest of the world. We talked about how their contributions during the Second World War, how significant they were in the bulk carrier industry, working with some of the biggest ships out there on the planet at the time, and such significant achievements that came from these gentlemen in this tiny island and their contribution to the rest of the world. Cayman represented their country well, and represented their families well, and how their income from these bulk carriers from going out to sea kickstarted our finance economy here in the Cayman Islands. So there's quite a lot going on. If you missed the show, well, you can check it out on our YouTube channel, and feel free to contact us if you have any contributions that you'd like to make, or you have any questions. But just to wrap up here, and Wendy, you have anything else you can add? Any teasers for the Ironmen and wooden ships too?
Well, I mean, other than it's going to be another good one.
Yes, it's definitely going to be a good one.
We're still putting some finishing touches on it. but it is quite different from one. Whereas it just shows a different set of skills, and it also really shows how one set us up for part two as well. And there's just really one last part that in my notes that I was looking over during the break that I wanted to bring home, which was a favorite line of me for me when I was doing my research. So it was about when Captain Southwell, we spoke about the Southwell years, when Captain Southwell first came to Cayman and met with Miss Gwendolyn to interview the Caymanian men and boys, because, he heard so much about her reputation. There's a book called The Southwell Years, so this is actually an excerpt from that book to give its credit. So it was saying, for a brief period of time, Captain Southwell spent, time in the Cayman Islands, and he came to interview potential crew to work for the vessels. So, quote unquote, his ears were not tuned to our vernacular well enough to know that we had no words in our vocabulary that began with the, quote unquote, th, or end in it, quote unquote, ed. So it's unlikely that when some 17-year-old kid came to interview and drawl the words Papa, Mosquito Keys, and Adams, that they would have meant, nothing to him at all. At first assumption, you'd consider him not the brightest. But he was soon to find out what Caymanians already knew, that this boy would have left school. But he was soon to find out what Caymanians already knew, that this boy would have left school at 12 years old and covered more than 5,000 miles of open water under sail with his father since then. He would have held a sextant and been taught the basics of celestial navigation. He would have respect for authority, courage, and learned the art of weather forecasting that had been handed down for generations. There was nowhere else in the world with kids like this to offer, and there were many of them to choose from in the Cayman Islands. And that's why we had the Southwell years, because Captain Southwell was drawn back by our community and even by the boys, and he hasn't seen anything. And these guys are world travelers. Remember, he is the employee of a billionaire, so he's not just going around to Central Caribbean areas. These guys have been over to the Pacific and back. And I just love that quote. It gives me chills when I read it.
Oh, it gave me goosebumps too.
And I'm so proud of those men that were little boys then, and so impressive. And I'm just really excited, for us, me and Geddes collectively, to put our education team to put the last finishing touches on this presentation of part 2 and get that out there to the public.
Oh, yeah. Well, we have to put it together, get the slides, find the appropriate pictures and that kind of thing. So it's going to take a little while. So we figure hopefully by next month, during Earth Month.
Yeah, we're mostly there.
Yeah. Sometime
mostly there.
Launch it during the month of April, which coincidentally,
all the stuff secret.
Yeah, coincidentally, we launched Ironman and Wooden Ships during Earth Month. Yeah, well, our first act presentation actually was launched during Earth Month, right? And yeah, so the thing is, there's lots more that we want to do with these presentations. Almost everyone we talk to either asks us if we have this recorded in a video format or in a book somewhere. So we are working on booklets, to be able to put this out, and we hope someday that this will, stimulate others to start looking into the more accurate history. We already have a history book called Founded Upon the Seas, but it does not have everything. Of course, most history books don't have everything, but yeah, we're hoping that this will cause a lot of other people to start looking into the history and culture and start recording this thing. Because we don't claim to have an exclusive right in it, but if we can start the ball rolling, and pay homage to these men and what they did for us, we're all the better for it. So, Iron Men and Wooden Ships, Part 2, as Wendy said, coming to a presentation near you. Right? So, keep in touch with us, and we will let you know when this happens. So, As we close off the show, I think we have a few announcements that we have to make. So
yeah, so just the usual last announcements. Before we get into that, as usual, Cayman, thank you so much for tuning into the Green Scene and for joining us here every Saturday at 11 a.m. So, coming up this week at the Cayman Turtle Center, Shark Talks and Shark Feeding Monday to Friday. Shark Talks at 10:30 a.m. and Shark Feeding respectively at 11 a.m. Come and feed the birds in the aviary, make a small donation to turtle conservation, and have lots of fun hand feeding the colorful birds. Here's a tip for our locals. Get yourself an annual pass and enjoy unlimited access to the center all year round. Grill and Chill Saturdays, back every Saturday, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Dive into a poolside barbecue with a live DJ, soak up the sun, and treat yourself to a daiquiri and beer bucket specials. Simply pay general admission for pool access and relish the DJ tunes while savoring delicious barbecue delights. It's the perfect weekend retreat. Turtle nesting season is here. It is a very early start this year. It was also an early start last year. The white egg incubation boxes can now be seen in the hatchery. The turtle hatchlings will be soon on display in a couple of months' time, and we do mean a couple of months, as in 2 months, about 50 days out now. And the Turtle Crawl fundraiser. Join us on Sunday, March 17th for the annual Turtle Crawl 5K, an easy fun/walk along Northwest Point Road, prizes and surprises. Come out, be healthy, have fun, and help support sea turtle and marine conservation in the Cayman Islands. For more information on these and other things happening at the Cayman Turtle Center, visit our website at www.turtle.ky or visit our Cayman Turtle Center social media platforms on Facebook and Instagram. You can also contact us at info, that's INFO, at turtle.ky for any questions or comments on the show. If you'd like to hear today's episode again or any other Green Scene episodes you may have missed, you can find them on Cayman Turtle Center's YouTube channel. Thank you again, guys, for tuning in. Join us again on the Green Scene next Saturday at 11 a.m. right here on Bobo 89.1 FM. And remember, you can help our sea turtles and Cayman's environment by picking up 3 pieces of plastic a day. Even the smallest piece of plastic could be the difference with saving a marine animal's life. Have a good weekend, Cayman.
Looking for something fun and different to do with the family? Join us at the Cayman Turtle Center for Grill and Chill Saturdays. Every Saturday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Enjoy a poolside barbecue, buckets of beer and daiquiri specials, and a live DJ. It's Grill and Chill Saturdays at Cayman Turtle Center.
Green sea turtle nesting season's approaching. Here's a few tips to keeping our friends safe. Turn off, redirect, or shield any lights that can be seen from the beach. Remove obstacles and litter from the beach. No bonfires on the beach, and remain quiet and distant if you see a nesting turtle. This message from the Cayman Turtle Center.